All right, thank you for coming. My name is Justin Grote, and today I'm going to be showing you Entra ID PIM activation, but better, using a module called JAz.PIM. So before I get started, again, you've heard it all day, but it really is true. Thank you so much to the sponsors. They make all of this so much more comfortable. You know, they help us with the snacks and all that kind of stuff, and this is a much nicer conference to have them. So again, every time you see them, if you see Ben, just give them an approving nod. Also, thank you to Allied Digital, which is my company, which sponsored me to be here today. We are a multinational MSP, and our sort of elevator pitch is that we turn your IT infrastructure into a utility. You don't generate your own power, you don't do your own sewer, you don't do your own cleaning. When it comes to your IT infrastructure, you have a core competency. Do you want to manage all the servers and everything underneath or your cloud, or do you want to have somebody who does that for everybody, do it for you, and manage it for you, and then give it to you in a nice OpEx way? So if that sounds interesting to you, give us a call. So I'm going to be talking about Azure AD Privileged Identity Management, or now Entra ID Privileged Identity Management. This comes from a deck that's old before a rename. So we'll do just a quick audience skill check. Who here knows what Entra ID PIM is? Excellent, you're in the right place. Who here is using Entra ID PIM in their environment? Who here has ever had to activate more than one role at a time for PIM? Who here, has probably lost half their day to it because it takes so long? Then you're in the right place for that too. So what PIM is, since you all know, I'm not going to go into it too much, but for the recording, PIM is just basically a way to allow for just-in-time credentials. How it works under the hood is PIM is not magic. PIM is literally just a service that runs in Azure. It uses a service principal that sort of sneakily they slide into your account. And it just manages the process of putting things into group, taking them out of groups, putting them into roles, putting people into roles, taking them out of roles. It just automates that part of a life cycle. It's like a big glorified PowerShell script. It's not actually PowerShell, but you get the idea, is that all it does is automate the tasks that you would normally do manually in a nice, slick wrapper. But that allows us to do a lot of things just to keep environments such so that we don't just have outstanding credentials. If things need to be changed, especially on the control plane, we need to add a virtual machine, remove a virtual machine. Those credentials just aren't sitting out there, so so-and-so who forgot to leave their laptop unlocked suddenly can't get in the environment. In order for them to do it, even if they knew what they were doing, they have to elevate to the role that they were going to make a change. They have to elevate to owner or virtual machine contributor or whatever. And then depending on how secure your environment needs to be, some manager gets an approval somewhere and says, hey, are you working on this thing? He's like, I'm at the beach, baby. And then you catch that problem and avoid that intrusion attempt. Plus, less privileges, it means less chances for you to do the accidental RMRF to your entire environment. If you got to prove it and do it as part of a workflow, you're probably thinking more about what you're doing before you do it. All those great reasons to use Azure AD PIM. PIM is just a way to, again, assign all those different kinds of roles, as well as, more importantly, audit those roles and just get control over your environment and have a really nice way to have just-in-time credentials. So since everybody knows what those are, I'm not going to waste too much time on that. So we have our typical way of doing Azure AD PIM. Since you guys have all seen this, I'm going to skip this part. You can find videos on this, but basically, the ClickOps procedure is to go into the portal, look at your available roles, click the one, give it the time that you want, give it your justification, click OK, wait 400 years for it to do the whole process, get in, get done, and come out, and now then you wait, pray that your token gets refreshed, and try again, and then now you can do your work. So that's all fine, especially if you only have one role you need to do. The problem is that the way the UI is built today is there's no way to activate multiple roles. So for a lot of people, that's not a big deal. I think the thinking behind the design of the thing was, oh, you'll just make a custom role for that. But if you're in certain places, like for us, we're a MSP, we do a ton of PIM because we're managing customers. We use Azure Lighthouse, which is a way to do management across tenants very effectively and scalable without us having to have accounts in the customer environments. But as a result, on any given day, if I have to address 8 different issues, I may be PIMing 22 times because we're very granular with our roles. We're an ISO 27001 SOC 2 certified data center, so we have to be very granular in our roles. We can't just say not owner, owner. We can't just say not admin, admin. We have to be very least privileged with ours. But Azure Lighthouse doesn't support custom roles. So all of our roles have to be the built-in ones. And so in order to be granular, we end up having to do a lot of roles. So just to do one thing, if I can't justify doing owner, I have to activate like 5 PIM roles. And this got real annoying real fast. So a couple of years ago, I was like, well, I looked into how does this procedure really even work? And there weren't even any APIs for it, but they started making some APIs for it, making it doable through PowerShell and such. And so I was like, oh, great. So now I'm going to look into PowerShell. I'm going to look at the AZ graph commands. I'm going to look at the Microsoft graph commands. And I got a way to do this. Fantastic. Not great. Not the best user interface. If I want to activate a role, this is what I have to write. I have to know my scope with this big long GUID. I have to know the name of my thing with a big long GUID. I have to know my principal ID, which is a big long GUID. I have to know my role definition ID, which is a big long predefined GUID. I got to know a lot of different GUIDy goos that I don't know about you, but I'm not that good at memorizing. And so looking up all this stuff is going to take a while. And I could use other PowerShell commands to do it, but now this just becomes this long, where I'm getting this thing, where this thing has that, then getting this thing, then getting this thing, then getting this thing. Cumbersome. Not really saving me that much time. Well, I mean, maybe graph is better. How can it be both better and worse at the same time? The better is their example uses splatting much better than the other one. The worse is that just like the way that the wizard defined and everything, and also not to mention, you know, as we know how this goes, I could end up walking off the stage here before I get to the end of this command. Again, not great, not a great experience. But the thing about, again, as we always like to say, is that it's the graph SDK. It is not the graph user-friendly nice PowerShell commands. It is not the AZ friendly SDK. It's a software development kit. And the problem with that is that we don't, when we're in the PowerShell world, we don't really think of ourselves that way. We're really spoiled. We're not used to doing the low-level stuff. We want nice, really nice little commandlets that pipeline and do all that kind of stuff and fancy that kind of stuff. And as much as we complain about that, thankfully, that gets heard. And so now we have things like the Entra module, which still just does all the fancy stuff underneath, but you have a really nice PowerShell-y kind of module. So I decided to all the time. I was wondering if there was a better way to do this, and so I did that. So I made JAZ.PIM. It's Justin's AZ equals Jazz. Get it? Good? No notes. It's perfectly fine. So my goals were to make this experience of doing PIM much more PowerShell-y. You know, I want it to be something that I can do that is just like what I'm used to. I want to get I want to get the thing, pipe enable it. I want to enable dash name and be able to tab complete and have all that work. I want some ergonomics here because I know I got to do this thing, so I just want to be able to do it, and without even having to look up a single GUID, be able to do it just based on my memory. I can remember owner. I can remember virtual machine contributor. I can't remember 2xyz f2y whatever. And then the other thing is that I don't want to go through that process serially of activating a role and then activating again, then I'm going through that process. I figured there's got to be a way to maybe parallelize this. So if I need to activate 5 roles, I can kick off the activation for the 5, track the progress, and then have that resolve on the other side. And then that way, even activating 5 roles, 10 roles, 15 roles only takes 1 or slightly more the time of 1 role. Once you have that, especially when you operate in an MSP environment like I do, the options really start expanding in terms of what you can do with this, improving the time for our users, and even going to the point is that because you can use these with managed identities, we can have our managed identities be PIMable. So we have automated processes that may run a task, may run a CVE analysis, and then if we find we need to do repairs, then our process will kick off a PIM activation in the customer tenant, and the customer's manager gets a PIM request from us, from our tenant that says at Allied Digital, this account at Allied Digital wants these rights to do this activity. And then they click OK in their tenant. They don't have to have any access to our tenant, and great. And then our process is able to continue, whether it's in Azure Functions or Azure Container Apps or whatever. So very powerful, not just from the interactive standpoint, but also the non-interactive standpoint. And so when you build these modules, one of the things you will want to take in consideration is the ability to pipeline. You want to have the ability to autocomplete. There's a lot of things that are really important about a module. Like in summary, you want that module to just be really sexy. So we want a nice, jazzy, sexy module. That's right. Sorry about that. So I have here, I'm just going to open just a standard command prompt. I have here a bunch of memes because I was doing this last minute. If I head to Azure here, give it a minute on the magic Wi-Fi. That's so good. Seems like it's holding pretty good. Is it not? Oh, I thought I mirrored that and I did not. I apologize. I know why it didn't like that. Is it good now? Maybe, magic, maybe, no. Yeah, I think there. Oh, yeah. All right, fine, let's do this the old-fashioned way. There we go. All right, so I have a subscription here. Actually, this is not the one I want to be in. I'm going to switch to my fancy little dev tenant here, but under my account. So, wait. So this is just a Microsoft dev tenant. These are ones that you can get that just basically Microsoft can give you. If you have like a Visual Studio Enterprise account, you can get one of these. It's a fully featured Azure subscription, well, Azure Entra ID tenant, and then optional subscription that just has E5 licenses in it. So basically carte blanche to test all kinds of things, for free. Well, for the cost of it. They used to be totally free. The best way to get one is a Visual Studio Enterprise subscription anyways. So this is basically just a tenant that has Entra ID P2 information management, which is the license that you need to be able to do PIM. And so we have here a couple things. We have our Moneymaker app. We got PIM Daddy as a simple example. And we have our subscription, which has a lot of that more detail in it. So in here, sorry, is it? Yeah, sure. Yeah, no worries. So if we have a subscription here, the main thing we're just going to show here is under the access control, we have some various roles, some role assignments. I have some roles that are active, some roles that are eligible, things that I have the ability to get to. These have all just sort of been pre-assigned. They don't mean anything. I'm not going to actually do anything. They're just sort of purposes of example. But you can picture in like your important app, maybe you have a PIM role for virtual machine contributor to allow them to get on there to do things. But you only allow that in emergencies because you've been attending this whole conference. You do everything ClickOps and destroy, or not ClickOps, do everything DevOps and destroy and build, and you never have to get in those virtual machines ever. But just in case, maybe you want the ability to have somebody get in there if they have to go to a virtual machine, RDP it, and fix something that you forgot about in your pipeline or some edge case comes up. But when that happens, maybe you really want to know about it, so you don't want to have any kind of standing access, and maybe it needs to go through an approval process. All that stuff, great examples of having PIM and then having it time-bound for like 2 hours. Great for contractors, all those things. So just examples of like why you'd want to use it, but these are sort of nonsense roles. It's just for purpose of example. So the typical way it's shown is you have all those long things and GUIDs and everything. I'm going to go ahead and load JAZ.PIM here using module fast. And it's going to take a little bit of a second to load because unfortunately the Microsoft Graph governance module recently had a change to it that makes it super bloated. So you see how long this is taking? If I brought up my task manager, you'd see my memory going crazy and my CPU going crazy. That's just importing that governance module. So there's a ticket on it. I'm trying to help them work through it, but just know that like you're going to see that bloat. It's annoying, but don't worry about it too much. So I have this module. Let me blow this up again as well. We'll just focus here because this is where all the magic's going to happen. So command-module JAZ.PIM. Much nicer, much terser words. Probably guess, just based on the name of these commandlets, what they're going to do. So we have commandlets for both JAZ role and JAZ-AD role. I do have a version of this that also will allow you to PIM groups. That API didn't exist the first time I did this, but I haven't gotten it to the point that it's releasable. But effectively, you have this way to deploy these roles. And so if you probably saw in that previous command, there's all kinds of terminology that basically doesn't exist in what you see in the GUI for PIM. And I think it just comes down to, this is what happens when you have engineers write a spec versus, the front end guys see it. They saw it and they're like, there's no way we can do this kind of stuff. And so they make I make no bones about it. I think the terminology in the API is terrible. So what happens underneath is you have all this terminology like role assignment schedule instance, role assignment schedule request, role eligibility schedule instance, role eligibility schedule instance request. It reads like a C# document. It's like they just took the classes and just splatted it over the API. So ultimately, it's really complicated to understand if you're used to like, I just want to activate my PIM. So you don't need to see any of that, but if you want to look at the source code for this, which we can do a little bit of if we have time, which we probably won't. But you'll see in here, in the background, I'm doing all those long class things and doing all that activation and implementation of that stuff. But you don't have to worry about any of that because I've hidden all that from you. If you've ever tried to do this from PowerShell, you already know the pain, so you're on board with me already. easy explanation about what you're supposed to do. Again, PowerShell, helpful, clear error message, most likely next step. I didn't connect, it reminded me, hey. Very hard to read, very not ergonomic. So I just have format files that make it so that it's the exact same, but you just get this real nice view, real easy to see what you have, who you are, where you are, what subscription you're in if you use a different version of the view. But these objects are still the exact same graph underlying objects. So you can actually take what I did with git jazz role and you can pipe that to all the graph commands because it's the same object that those other commands. If you need to do something more advanced than what my module supports, you can just use this as an easy way to get those roles and then do your more advanced thing, but you don't have to do all the other stuff. So what if you also just want to get an individual role? If you just want to enable and not go through that process, you can, if you have a role name here, you can just hit tab here and it'll automatically in the background fetch them and you have all your available roles as tab complete. Much better than doing the git, finding the GUID, taking the GUID, copying that, saving it to a variable. Again, these are all what's in the default examples. Is that instead, it's just enable role, what's the role I want? I can't remember at the moment. Control space, autocomplete works. And so then you pick the one that you want, and then you can just, we'll do like verbose, and I'll do justification, and my favorite justification. And you can specify, now you can specify the time limit in a lot of different ways. If you want to specify it by just saying dash hours, you're like, I want it for 2 hours, you can do that. If you want it not before and not after, you can do that with date ranges. You can do add, get date, add days, minus, whatever you need to do. So if you have a ticketing system and you, like this is what we use this for, is that if you have a ticketing system and you've had a change request that's approved with your customer or your internal team or however you work, and this is ready to go, then once that change request is approved, you can have that fire off a webhook to an Azure function in our case, that then takes that information, looks at the time window that's allowed, and sets up a PIM activation so that it schedules the PIM activation for that account for that person who's going to make that change. So when that person goes to the Azure portal, they don't have to PIM activate. It automatically does it for them because it's been scheduled. They just know once they log in at that time, now they have access, and they've got 2 hours to do it before the access automatically pulls out. Nobody touches that. It's all handled in the ticketing system. Not one human's involved with doing the actual typing or enabling or anything like that. Let's just do this for hours. And if you don't specify hours, I think I set the default to 2. Again, just the other thing is like intelligent default. Don't specify things. You don't have to know all the parameters. I have pretty intelligent defaults. And if you want to change those defaults, that's what the PS default parameter values thing is for. You can have your own defaults. So if you prefer to have a default of 1 hour, you can either put that in your profile, you can make it a company profile, and it just makes that default implicit. I do. I just saw that. But and you get this real nice detailed message, do you want to do this at this time for this thing? And there, that's activated. So that was a role, one role. So let's do this, let's go for our roles that we have here. So now I can do dash activated, and I can see which, it'll take a second for it to get through the final step of it. And there is a thing, I didn't add it, there's a dash wait parameter. So that step just gets you to the point of activating the roles, but then you can go on and do stuff while you wait for it to finish up in the background. But if you dash wait, it'll continue to wait until your credential is actually ready. And so here eventually it'll probably show up, but we'll worry about that later. So what I can do here is that, which role did I activate there? So I did Moneymaker, I did the owner on Moneymaker. So I can get role, pipe where, role definition display name. not equal owner. We'll skip that one. Create those, do it on the pipeline. Everything's pipelinable and nice, so you can just pass it from one to the other. You can define it at another time, save it off to a CLI XML, rehydrate it, and then bring it in. But basically, once you have the roles that you want, you can pipe the roles into the command, real simple, and it'll go through, take each role, activate it, and it'll sit and wait for all three of them to complete, and then return once the roles are ready. I wonder if there's a connection here. There we go, sorry. The question is, do I support approvals? And the answer is yes. So what will happen is that here is like where it would stop if you have like the wait. You see over here you have like the request type and the status. So the status on these is provisioned, but you can have it stop on the status pending approval. And then at that point, then you just do the same get and activate, and then it'll just resume. It's idempotent, so once it's approved, it'll either automatically provision, or if you have there's that one step when you do an approval where the person then has to reschedule again. So if there's that, then you just do that step. But typically the way that this works with approvals is you do what I just did, and instead of saying provisioned, it'll say pending approval. And then once that person approves it, then it just completes the process.
Can that person use JAZ.PIM?
I don't have an approval API for that. That is something that could be done. I mean, like that could be a feature add. There's no reason it can't be done. The main focus on this was for the activation and deactivation process. Like I could make really nice commandlets for like creating and removing roles and make that whole part easy, but we found like that wasn't that big of a deal, even as ugly as the commands are. Like this was the part that was really bogging us down, and so we wrote for that. For our automation things in terms of like the approvals and stuff, a lot of that ends up just going as an email to the person, and the person clicks approve. And we have some things, so like for times when like 5 roles get activated. But yeah, so there is a way to, if you do get Jazz role -all, and I don't have rights to do this in this tenant, but if you did that, you could get all pending approvals. And if you do that without the -all, it'll get all approvals, all activations that are pending you, and then you do sort of the same enable thing. So some of that stuff works. It's not fully baked, but the idea would be is that is absolutely something that could be fully done for approvals. Yeah.
Are you able to handle MFA requests?
So the thing about that is that the way that works in the current API is that if you have to be MFA authenticated here. So if you're not MFA, if I did this, so first of all, if you don't already have MFA enabled for everybody, then fix that first and then come back to me. So because I would get this all the time. It would be like, they would be like, hey, it didn't work. Why? Because I got an error that I wasn't MFA authenticated. I'm like, so you allow your account to not be MFA authenticated? He's like, yeah. I'm like, fix that and then come back to me. So these days it's not as big of a deal, but you'll see like one of the first issues in the repo is somebody saying like, it got mad because I wasn't MFA authenticated. Well, my argument is your conditional access policy should require you to be MFA authenticated. It's 2025. It's so easy with the phone, or the passkeys are stupid simple now. Like there's almost no reason to not be MFA authenticated in this day and age. And if you're not MFA authenticated, whatever you're doing almost certainly should probably be a service principal or managed identity instead. That being said, but that's said, because I'm logged in here, I'm already MFA'd. Because when I did that connect MG graph, it didn't show it, but I already had my token cache, but it would have popped. Actually, let's show that real quick. So if I do disconnect MG graph, and I do get Jazz role, it's going to get mad at me. Oh, or not, because it's cached. Get Jazz AD role, sorry, because that's the Azure side of things. So that gets mad at me. If I do disconnect AZ or context. Okay, so see now it's mad at me because neither of those are set up right. Or sorry, get Jazz role. That one should get mad at me. Might be slower. Yeah, because, well, now my context is probably back to my other test one. So if I do a connect AZ account for my tenant, I get I don't know if you've seen in the newer versions of AZ, it actually uses Windows Account Manager, so it can actually use the credentials that you already have from logged in, which is really nice. You don't have to do the MFA, you don't have to do the token, it can get an account key just like that. And by the way, everything I've shown is that I'm actually a guest in this tenant. I'm using my account for my other thing. So I'm not even, everything that you've seen, I'm not even a resident user in this tenant. I'm a guest. I'm a B2B guest. But I can assign myself, all the rights can be assigned to me just like that. Azure Lighthouse just lets you do some stuff fancy with that too. But yeah, all that stuff works, and you don't even have, you can do all this with contractors. So I could be a contractor, and you don't have to create me an account. You just add me as a guest from his tenant, and then give him the roles that he needs to do his work, and then it's all audited, opened, closed. A lot of the stuff that people used to, spent a lot of money on SailPoint and all those kind of things for entitlement management. A lot of people don't realize a lot of that stuff you can just do in Microsoft Azure. It's generally not quote unquote for free, but the number of people who just buy E5, most people already have it. So it is included in the price, and you're paying for all this other software when you could just do it. There's entitlement management, there's all kinds of stuff, this PIM stuff, that people are paying all this money for third-party softwares to do when you could just do it in Entra ID and enjoy all the benefits and unified logging and blah, 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 blah. So, now that I'm connected again, so now I can do that get JAz role. And I can also see which ones are activated. Hopefully some actually show up this time. Okay, so now when I do -activated, this shows me all my roles that I currently have activated. So when I get done with whatever I'm doing, just pipe it to disable JAz role. It'll go to each one, disable them, and I'm out. So anybody who has ever done the raw commands for this, how great is that? Give me. Yeah, so that's kind of the key. So I have one thing to show here too. So the thing is that this works really well with the Azure version of the commands, because as we saw with the wonderful Azure PowerShell representative who takes a lot of heat, but he works really hard. Conversely, the Microsoft Graph team have different opinions, and so when I wrote this at the time, the Graph module was beta, and they released a new version that wasn't released as a breaking version change, but did break me. So I'm going to show you something that is a really fancy way to do write progress with parallel run spaces and everything that will only work for just a second. So bear with me here. You'll get an idea of what it should look like. So if I got to connect mggraph here again. And again, the graph module doesn't use WAM, so I got to do this the dumb way, which luckily is still already cached in my browser. So if I get those JAZ AD roles, I can do, we'll do it again. Maybe we'll get global reader, maybe we will. Let's get random. Let's see how we do. All right, this is what we're doing today. This is what we're working with. All right, so I'm going to pipe that to enable JAZ AD role justification. I should have saved this as a variable. And won't have time to show up. If I went into the portal, you'd see the activation, you see the justification, you know what all that looks like, but it's all there. There's nothing different happening here than what you do in the GUI. Literally, if you hit F12 in network tools, everything that I'm sort of doing is what happens in the back end when you use the GUI. So we'll do that, and then we're going to pipe this to a command called wait JAZ AD role. And this may work, it may not. Let's find out. If this works, you're going to have to watch fast, because it might crash really fast because of the stupid change they made. But it's going to take a second to get those roles and enable them and get them started. But if it gets to this point, how it's supposed to work, come on. We're at the end anyways. I don't want to ruin the surprise, but I'll probably just have to lie. I should have put verboses in there so we could see where it was at. Okay, watch this. See the parallel? You can watch the status of all the provisionings and see where they're at. And so to that point about approval, if you stay on that wait, it'll go to the approval step and it'll keep waiting there. And you can sit there and wait for the approval until the approval completes, and then that progress bar will move forward. The other one. So that little quick thing that you saw, so here's the stupid assembly thing that they broke. But that little parallel thing that you saw there is that I'm really proud of the way that I got that parallel processing to work across run spaces. So if you want to see a really cool version of that, that's in there. If you want to see the way that all these autocompleters work, so that, anybody go to Emrys's session on argument completers and transforms? Okay, then go back and watch those recordings, and you'll see, if you think that's cool, how I can just do -AD role, or dash whatever it was, app roles. No, what do you do? Let's do enable. Enable JAZ role, dash role name, scroll space. Like if you think you see how just by control space it came up with the progress and now I have all those? That's a PowerShell script block in the background using what's called an argument completer. So if you want to learn more about that, you can watch this session, and then after you watch this session, come to my source code and see how I do it. But so this is just an easy way to complete for the thing that you want to do. And then the thing about the reason it's a string like that is because due to a limitation here, it's like I still have to go back and find the object that you were looking for based on the string. So this is a way to still have all the unique information I need, including the GUID, to know what that was, but also still have it read at least somewhat user-friendly. But again, you can use the git commands and pipes and all that kind of stuff. So now you have this whole framework for doing PIM activations that is, as I like to say, PowerShelly. You can get objects, you can pipe, you can select, you can do all that stuff, you can do whatever you need to do to validate and make sure you're on the thing, and then when you're ready to go, you can run the thing, and also I forgot to do the, let's see if what if works here. Might not work with the AZ one. Yeah, so see, real quickly I just did that, and so there's my what if. When I run this, I see I'm going to activate this, and if you have your hours for whatever, like if I change this to hours 5, so you'll see the time frames are different. And so you can preview exactly how long that thing's going to be available before you actually run it. So that's the fun of what if support. Having what if support is great. Also supports confirm, as you saw, like when I ran it. I think I have the default to confirm high, so it will prompt you for confirm unless you explicitly say you don't want to activate the role. And you got that. So I think that is about it. I'll take any further questions before we wrap up. All right. Well, again, thank you very much. Please go ahead and do the thing if you can. And yeah, thank you.